Welcome to Recommendations for Successful Video-Based Instruction. My name is Brad Weiner, and I am an adaptive physical educator in Maryland. In the spring, when COVID took over, I found myself looking to reach out to my students. And one of those methods to reach out to my students was through video-based instruction.
Hi, my name is Jihyun. I'm a faculty member teaching adapted physical education courses at San Jose State University. So we're going to talk about video-based instruction today in this presentation. Video-based instruction is typically pre-recorded and presented to the students through asynchronous learning. Asynchronous learning doesn't require live interaction. Instead, the content is available online for students to access when it suits their schedule. Although there is a little research on the effectiveness of video-based instruction as the main method of teaching school-age children, because of COVID-19, all teachers, including AP teachers, now start using video-based instruction more and more. So we think that this would be really important to learn how to create effective videos.
Right. In the spring, when the schools closed, I had to figure out how I was going to reach out to my students and provide instruction where I wasn't working with them live. And so I found that video-based instruction was the best way to provide my students what they needed at that time.
In this presentation, we will introduce different strategies when creating instructional videos, especially based on the following 5 tips or recommendations.
The first thing we're going to look at is things to consider when planning. When we are providing video-based instruction, we still should consider the curriculum standards and themes aligned to the grade level, thinking about the education provided to the student and not just providing them activities. So we still want to create things that are standard-based. We also want to consider the developmental levels of our students. So just like when we're in the building and we're creating our lessons, we're thinking about our students and we're developing our lessons to meet the students' needs. So when we're creating video-based instruction, continue that by developing developmental appropriate activities. Maintain your focus on the objective of the lesson. A video without an objective is becoming a physical activity, not necessarily physical education. So continue to focus on that educational purpose of your video. Ensure the task can be understood and performed by your student. If I'm creating a video that is too fast, my students may not be able to keep up with myself or the video. Or if I'm speaking too fast, they may not be able to understand what I want them to do. The main goal is that we want success for all students and making lessons accessible to the parent. As with our students with disabilities, the parents are often supporting the students' access to the material. One of the ways that myself and my colleagues are supporting parents to have access to the material is we develop lesson plans. In the gray boxes on the left, you'll see that we have the lesson objective, we have lesson activities, and then we have materials that the parents will need. On the right, in the yellow boxes, we have information that are for our paraeducators, so that our paraeducators can also know what we are doing, and also information that guides my development of those materials. So student 1 and what I'm specifically looking at for student 1, student 2, student 3, so that when I'm creating my video, I understand that I'm staying focused on the IEP and the lesson objectives. When I write these lesson plans on the left in the gray boxes for my parents, I want to keep it simple. I don't want to write long paragraphs. We know that our parents have a lot of anxiety and are very stressed, so we want to make it an easy access. All those blue words are links, so parents will be able to click the link and easily access the material. So by providing them lesson plans, it supports access to the material.
Very good, Brad. This looks very useful and helpful. Okay, when it comes to success for all students, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 ensures that information technology should be accessible for all viewers. So in this slide, we're going to talk about some of aspects of the accessibility. Brad, would you explain further information regarding accessibility?
Yes. So when I started to develop my materials early on in the spring, I was not aware of Section 508 originally, and I was not thinking about my students' visual accessibility of the material. However, this was a very important thing for me to learn, and it's a very important thing for you to know when you're creating your videos. We want to make sure that our backgrounds are one singular color, whether it's a black background or a white background, that the background that we're using is one singular color and that what we are wearing is in contrast to that color. Now, this may not be necessary for all students, but again, you have to know your students and know your students' visual levels so that they can access the material. The colors that are best to use are yellow and red against a black background for that contrast. We want to decrease the number of images on the screen. If you have lots of moving objects on the screen, now you're asking the students to visually attend to the multiple objects, and that can be very difficult to, one, focus, and two, also understand what is happening on the screen. It can be very straining for the eyes as well. So you want to consider how many images you have, and then also the speed. If you are having something that moves at a very fast speed, or if you have a background that has lots of lights that are blinking towards me, that can strain my eyes, make it more difficult for me to focus. Think about having something that's a slower pace. Knowing your students is very important, and knowing your students' visual abilities is very important.
Yeah, all these recommendations sounds very useful for students who have sensory difficulties and also limited attention. What about students with visual impairment and hearing impairment?
One more thing with the visual piece is that you also have to know if you have students with seizures, because if you create a video with a lot of blinking lights, that can stimulate a student's seizure. Mm-hmm. And you're right. We also have to consider the accessibility for individuals that may have hearing impairments. I personally have a student with hearing impairment that also has parents that both have hearing impairment. And the parents are on screen to support the student. So I need to be able to provide access to those parents to support the student. And we can provide closed captioning, subtitles on the bottom of our videos to support our parents. Dr. Melissa Bittner has recently made a video about how you can add subtitles through the use of YouTube. And I would suggest having subtitles on all the time, whether you have students with hearing impairments or not, because we consider that students learn differently, and not all of us are auditory learners. Some of us are visual learners. And so if I can hear what you're saying and also read what you're saying, that will support me.
Yeah, and Brett and I had a little conversation regarding how to support students who are visually impaired using videos. Of course, video would not be super helpful when it comes to students with visual impairments. However, videos always come with audio. So if you upload your video to YouTube, students can hear the audio file in the video over and over again, and that might be helpful.
For sure. And when I am providing instruction to those students, I want to speak clearly about what I'm presenting. So if I'm holding a ball, I want to explain the ball that I'm holding. I can say the color of the ball, the size of the ball. I can describe how it fits into my hand. So I want to be very descriptive in the language that I use for my students that may not be able to see what I am providing.
Very good. Let's go to the next. The second thing is chroma keying or chroma key. Chroma keying is the process by which a specific color element is removed from a video or keyed from video scene and replaced with a different element. So basically, this technique is used to remove the background from a subject in an image or video. Brad, can you explain further using some examples?
So in the beginning, in March, when I was thinking about how I was going to access my students and provide them their education, I came across this green screen, which doesn't always have to be green. Green is the most popular use background color, but you could use a blue background as well. So I started to use this method. It allows you to be able to create some great fun movies to motivate your students. It's very popular in movies such as Marvel movies, where if you saw the Avengers movie and they're in New York City and New York City has been destroyed, instead of creating a whole background, they can have their green screen and then use a digital background. So the actors are acting in front of a green screen, and then the technology professionals will put the background in later. So I went and started to create some videos that was similar, where I was using a green screen, and then afterwards I was editing to put the background to go with the movie that I was creating for the instruction.
Very good. So when the green screen background has been keyed, it will be fully transparent. Then you can fill in that transparent area with a different image or video.
And you can do a lot of cool things with this, such as reenacting a story. One of the green screen movies that I created was going on a lion hunt. So I took my preschoolers through the story, working on positional words, going over and under and in and through. And this was a story that they were reading in their classroom. So I was taking their classroom in literature and I was moving it into a movement-based activity and using the green screen to motivate them as if they were now part of the story and they were moving with me through the story. So you can reenact the story. That's one really cool way to do it. You can engage it with COVID. Sometimes we can't go outside as much as we used to or wanted to. But now you can use the green screen to take your students on adventures that they may have never had the opportunity to go on, such as taking them to the amusement park or just taking them to a park, taking them on a boat ride where you have to row the boat, maybe taking them and trying to climb a mountain. So you can take them on different adventures that are maybe outside your geographic location.
That's really cool. Then can you provide a background of the students' school gym so they feel like they are in the gym?
That would be a great suggestion because this is a very stressful time for our students and they may not understand what is happening. They may not understand why they can't go to school. So if you provide a background of your school gym, that can create a little bit more familiarity for them and it can release some of that stress because, oh, I remember that gym and this is what I do when I'm in that gym. Mm-hmm. So that can support your students in understanding what you're going to be asking them to do and release some of that stress. And that's really a main goal that we want to do, release the stress from our students. But yeah, here are two sample videos that I created back in the spring. One was rowing the boat. And then the other one, I did take my students to amusement park and played a game called Whack-A-Mole.
Shall we take a look?
Welcome to another session of PE with Mr. Brad. Today, we're out on the lake, and I brought my canoe and my oars so that we can go rowing on the lake. But first, we should practice our rowing. To row, we're going to bring our arms forward and back. Forward and back.
And we can pause the video there. And as you can see, I'm also providing the written word. So I'm demonstrating the activity and then I'm showing the written word. And you can notice the background. So when you're creating a background like you have, you could also talk about your background, such as the colors of the trees. And then you could tell your students to think about if they've ever been in nature and walked around the color and notice the color of the trees and the nature. We also want to think about the students. My students they have multiple disabilities with orthopedic impairments. So when I'm looking at the skill of rowing, this is a challenge for my students to extend their arm and to bend their arm, which is why this is a great activity for them.
And back. Now, you can pick up your oars to practice. You can get 2 paper towel rolls, and those could be your oars to go forward and back.
And so you want to give them options that they have at home. You want to give them options that they have at home so that they can engage in the lesson.
Forward and back. Okay, let's practice. Ready? Go. Forward and back. Forward and back.
And so this is the practice section. So we're practicing our forward and back together. And then later in the video, I give them an opportunity to do it on their own where we work together, but without me saying forward and back. So that was one example of a video. You just saw one example of rowing our boat. On your free time, you can click on the link for Whack-A-Mole, where I play a game that engages the students with knocking over cups.
Okay, this slide is about finding your background. So how can you create all these attractive, motivating background? I haven't used many different things, but I typically search GIF files on search engines such as Google to locate an ideal background or image and then use that as my background or part of my background. I know Brad has been using all different strategies to find the background.
Yeah, the GIFs are an excellent use of visuals because it is a looped video that just keeps coming around again, just like you have down at the below with our little shark who's moving and jumping. I often use my cell phone to do videos, but if you don't use your cell phone, a good way to do a person-first video where the students feel like they're part of your video as from the first-person point of view is a GoPro, where you can either put the GoPro on your head or you can wear it on your chest. And as you're engaging in a fun activity, the students, when you put it on screen, would view it as from the point of view of the first person. You could also go to YouTube videos and search for backgrounds. And when you find a background that you like, you can go to the website KeepVid, which allows you to copy the link into this KeepVid and download it to your computer. You then can use that video in the programming so that that background is part of your video.
We found different options for your green screen, from some cheap options to more expensive options. You can find all different options from Party City store, dollar stores, Amazon, and other places.
Yeah, so don't feel like you need to buy the full green screen setup. For a lot of us, we may not have the room for a big screen setup. I personally went with the poster paper. I got 50 feet of poster paper, cut it into 3 sections, and put it on my wall. So you have to look at your own budget, and they all work perfectly. But thinking about programs to use and thinking about the technology that you have, I use a Mac, and because I use a Mac, one of the programs that comes with a Mac is iMovie, which is a great software to use. And you can see that there's a link for a tutorial. So if you have a Mac, you can click on that link and learn how to use the green screen function. If you don't have a Mac, we provide you with the option of Windows PC through VSDC. And some people like to use their iPhones and they use an app. So applications also are a way to create green screens, one being vScope.
Okay, now we're going to talk about including organizational aspect of the skill in your instruction and videos. The video-based instruction needs to include the organizational aspects of the skill, just like what we do during in-person instruction. When my students were asked to create instructional video, since they focus so much on their content, they forgot about including organizational aspects of the skill. So Brad reviewed their videos and provided them with some feedback about this, and their videos were improved a lot.
So on the next screen, we're going to look at how we can use verbal cues such as prompting 1, 2, 3, or visual place markers, or sequencing steps to support our student learning. So here's one example that I was looking for students to sequence their movements. And so in the video, it first says, first watch Mr. Brad. And I'm not using a green screen here. I am using iMovie, and I put some arrows in there to provide visual support. After we watch Mr. Brad, then they get to practice with me. So this is where we do it slow together. And then I combine the sequence and do it fast, and they follow along and see if they can do it, the whole sequence together. So thinking about how we want to structure our learning. Here are 4 different ways that you can structure your learning. The first one is a sequence of 3 movements, which is what we were just talking about. There's also arm dancing, swapping at an object, which is just providing them a quick 30-second to a minute of what you're looking for them to do. Same thing with a sock pull off, just a quick video of what you want them to do, something very with less steps to it, just a 1-step short video that you can watch on your own. And monitoring progress is extremely important, but also could be very difficult. One of the things that I had to consider in the spring was, here I'm creating these videos for my students, but how am I going to assess my students? And there are multiple ways to think about how we're going to assess our students, such as a self-assessment. Or am I able to provide a way for my students to self-assess themselves? Am I able to provide a method for my peers, so one peer can watch another peer? Or do I do teacher assessment, and how am I going to do that? What is the best method for my students to do this? There are various platforms that we can use.
Yeah, since video, if students record themselves, then that's a permanent record. So self-assessment, peer assessment, and teacher assessment would be possible.
So here are some ways that we can monitor progress. I have found Google Forms, which is kind of like a survey that I create. I then send the link to my parents or the students, and they can fill it out while they're watching the video. There's also Google Slides, where when you're not in presenter mode, you can move the slide, and that is a way for this, you can record what the students know. So I can create a slide of questions. The students can access the slides and move their answer or type in their answer. And then because I shared it with them, I have access to see how they answered those questions. What's very important when you do this is you want to make sure that each student makes a copy, that you make a copy for each student, so that students aren't moving answers all on one screen. There's also Play Post-it, where students can respond to a question presented on a video, such as you record a video, and then Play Post-it allows you to put a question such as, what skill did you observe? And the students can respond to that question.
The Loom and Flipgrid, as far as I know, they are very similar. Students can video record themselves, engage in a task, movement task, or they can answer a question and then upload that video on the platform.
So my question could be, how do you jump with 2 feet? And the student may record themselves jumping with 2 feet. And then I can look at I can monitor their progress of how they are jumping with 2 feet.
Okay, last part is, how to get parents and student feedback. Getting feedback from parents and students support the teacher's development and appropriate and accessible education material for student engagement. And sometimes teachers take feedback personal, but feedback could be valuable, and this would be an opportunity for them to improve their instruction for the future. Brett, have you had any experience getting feedback from parents?
Reflection is extremely important, and we should constantly engage in personal reflection. And yes, I have received feedback from my parents that has supported my future development of creation of videos. One of the feedback that I received is that parents felt that my videos in the beginning were very long and that they were struggling to watch the entire video. So one thing that I have done since is made shorter videos or made multiple videos that are much shorter. So that has been great feedback for me. We're now coming to the end of our presentation and appreciate that you've sat through and watched our video and hung out with us. But we want to provide a couple final thoughts for you, kind of key thoughts to think of mind when you create your video, such as, like my parents provided me feedback on making shorter videos, we should strive to keep the video under 10 minutes. Once we extend 10 minutes, we think about students' capability of attending for that long. Now, you also have to consider some students may not be able to attend more than 3 minutes. And so again, knowing your students is going to help you design your video and how long that video is. I may not provide a lot of flashy backgrounds because of my students, or I may put a background that specifically has, for example, Pokemon, if I know that my students are really motivated by Pokemon. You also have to consider all students within a video. So when you develop a video, think about how you're providing multiple ways that students could be successful in one video by providing them multiple ways to engage in that video. You also have to consider that students may not have the same equipment that you're using and provide multiple different types of equipment that they could use within a video. Pre-recorded videos allow the opportunity for self-reflection, as we've discussed, whether I am self-reflecting on my teaching or students can self-reflect on their performance by rewatching it. And then the main thing that I want to focus on is put more energy in the education. What is your objective over the activity? When I started this, I was just trying to get activities out to my students, but I really want to focus on now designing a lesson-based or objective-based lesson. So I start with what I want to focus on, and I build my activity around that. Well, thank you again. We are always available to you, so please feel free to contact us. You have my website, and then you have the San Jose State University Adapted PE YouTube videos, which are great videos that you could use for your instruction.
Thank you for your attention. Please contact us if you have any questions.